The flight attendant ripped up Keanu Reeves's boarding pass right in front of him. She laughed and said, "First class isn't for people who dress like homeless wanderers." She called security to remove him from the gate. Other passengers stared. Some filmed on their phones. A child recognized him, but she didn't care. "I don't care who he thinks he is," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. But 30 minutes into that flight, at 35,000 feet, the cockpit door opened. The captain stepped out, with two executives in business suits, and behind them walked Keanu, still in his worn jeans and jacket. Still calm, still kind, but now flanked by the airline's chief operations officer. That's when she discovered he wasn't just another passenger trying to sneak into first class. He was the new owner of the entire airline. He had bought majority shares just 3 weeks earlier, quietly, without press releases or announcements. He wanted to see how his airline really treated people when no cameras were watching. And what he saw at that gate told him everything he needed to know. The flight attendant who mocked him, who tore up his boarding pass, who called him a faker in front of dozens of witnesses. She stood frozen in the aisle, her face drained of all color. Her hands trembled. Her perfectly styled hair suddenly felt like a costume. The cabin went dead silent. Every passenger turned to watch. Some held their breath. Others whispered. A few smiled, knowing exactly what was coming. And Keanu, the man who had stayed quiet through the humiliation, who had smiled at the child asking for a photo, who had walked away without anger or revenge, he looked her directly in the eyes and said 5 words that changed everything. "We need to talk, right now." What happened next, at 35,000 feet in the sky, no one on that flight will ever forget. Not the passengers who witnessed it, not the crew who enabled it, and definitely not Rebecca Sterling, the senior flight attendant who learned the hardest lesson of her career. This is the true story of the day. Kindness became currency, and cruelty got grounded. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? And have you ever been judged unfairly just because of how you looked? Let's hear your stories, because this one hits different. It was a cold Tuesday evening at Los Angeles International Airport. Flight 447 to New York was boarding. A red-eye packed with business executives, celebrities, and exhausted travelers just trying to get home. Gate 17 buzzed with activity. Announcements echoed through the terminal. Kids cried. Couples argued about carry-on space. But in the first-class lounge, everything was different. Quiet, exclusive, controlled, and ruling over it like a queen in her castle was senior flight attendant Rebecca Sterling. 12 years with Apex Airlines. Designer uniform tailored perfectly to her frame, hairstyled like she'd just walked out of a salon, makeup flawless, a smile that looked warm from a distance but felt ice-cold up close. She stood near the boarding gate with her crew, 3 younger attendants who followed her every move like students watching a master. "First class is a privilege, not a charity," she told them, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "We protect the experience for those who actually deserve it." Her eyes scanned every passenger approaching the gate. Expensive suit? Warm smile and a personal greeting. Designer, handbag. "Right this way, ma'am. Can I help with your luggage? Rolex watch?" "Welcome aboard, sir. We're honored to have you." But families with crying babies rushed through with barely concealed annoyance. Elderly passengers moving slowly. Heavy sighs and eye rolls to her crew. Anyone who didn't fit her narrow definition of class, treated like an inconvenience. She had perfected the art of judgment disguised as professionalism, and tonight she was in rare form, showing off in front of a packed gate, making comments under her breath, ensuring everyone knew she was the gatekeeper of luxury. Her junior attendants giggled at her jokes. They'd learned quickly, agree with Rebecca or your shifts get worse. Then at 7:43 p.m. he walked up. No entourage, no assistant rushing ahead to clear the way, no sunglasses or designer luggage, just a man in worn jeans, a leather jacket that had seen better days, and a simple black backpack slung over one shoulder, Messy dark hair, slight beard. Tired eyes that still somehow looked kind. He moved quietly through the crowd, polite and unassuming, letting others pass before him. Keanu Reeves. But Rebecca didn't recognize him. She saw only what she wanted to see. Someone who clearly didn't belong in her precious first class. He approached the counter with a gentle smile, boarding pass in hand. "Good evening," he said softly. Seat 2A. Rebecca was mid-conversation with another attendant, laughing about something. She barely glanced at him. "Sir, the economy line is over there." She waved dismissively toward the other side of the gate. "I have first class, seat 2A. Now she looked up, eyes scanning him from head to toe, judging every detail, the worn jacket, the scuffed boots, the simple backpack instead of designer luggage. And then she laughed, not a polite chuckle. A loud, mocking laugh that made several passengers turn and stare. Her crew joined in, covering their mouths but not their amusement. "Excuse me, sir, but there's been some kind of mistake. This is first class. You probably meant economy, right? It happens all the time. People get confused with the seat numbers." Keanu's expression didn't change. Still calm, still patient. "No mistake. That's my seat. Seat 2A, first class." Rebecca exchanged glances with her crew, the kind of look that said, "Can you believe this guy?" She took his boarding pass with 2 fingers, like it might be contaminated, and glanced at it briefly. "Sir, I'm going to be honest with you. First class is for professionals, business people, individuals who actually contribute something valuable to society." She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice but not enough. "Not for people who look like they just rolled out of bed or off a park bench." A woman nearby gasped. An older gentleman shook his head in disgust, and a little boy, maybe 7 years old, tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered loudly, "Mom, isn't that John Wick?" But Rebecca didn't hear him. She was too busy enjoying her moment of power, too busy proving she was in control, too blind to see she'd just made the biggest mistake of her career. Rebecca held the boarding pass up to the light, squinting at it like she was examining a counterfeit bill. Her lips curled into a smirk. Well, the system says it's valid. But we both know that doesn't mean much, does it?" She turned to her crew, speaking loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You know how easy it is to print fake boarding passes these days. People try it all the time. They think if they dress down, act humble, we'll just let them through." Keanu stood quietly, hands in his pockets, still calm. "Ma'am, I assure you it's real. I just want to board the flight." "Oh, I'm sure you do." Rebecca's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Listen, I've been doing this for 12 years. I can spot a fake passenger from a mile away." She held up the boarding pass between 2 fingers. "First class isn't for people like you. It's for people who've earned it, people who contribute, people who matter." The words hung in the air like poison. Several passengers stopped in their tracks. Phones came out. Recording lights blinked on. An older businessman in a 3-piece suit spoke up from the line. "Excuse me, miss, but that's incredibly rude. Why don't you just check your system?" Rebecca whipped around, glaring at him. "Sir, I'm handling this. Please mind your own business." She turned back to Keanu, her smile now completely gone, replaced by cold contempt. "You want to know what I think? I think someone gave you this as a joke, or maybe you bought it off some scam website thinking you could sneak into luxury." She ripped the boarding pass in half. Just like that, tore it right down the middle, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. "There. Problem solved. Now you can either buy an economy ticket like everyone else at your level, or you can leave." Gasps erupted from the crowd. "Oh my God, did she just— That's insane! Someone's getting fired!" But Keanu didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't even frown. He simply looked down at the torn pieces in her hand, then back up at her face. His voice was soft, almost sad. "You know, sometimes people judge books by their covers, and sometimes they miss the whole story." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Save the philosophy, sir. Security." She snapped her fingers and waved toward 2 security officers standing near the gate. "We have someone trying to board with fraudulent documents. Please escort him out." The 2 officers, approached, looking uncomfortable. One of them, a younger guy with kind eyes, leaned in and whispered to his partner, "Dude, I think that's actually Keanu Reeves." The other officer squinted. "Wait, seriously?" But before they could say anything, Rebecca cut them off. "I don't care if he looks like someone famous. That's probably why he thinks he can get away. With this, remove him, now." The first officer hesitated. "Ma'am, maybe we should just double-check the system. Are you questioning my authority?" Rebecca's voice rose, sharp and commanding. "I said remove him!" The little boy from earlier broke free from his mother's hand and ran up to Keanu, eyes wide with excitement. "Are you really him? Are you really John Wick?" Keanu's entire face softened. He knelt down to the boy's level, one knee on the ground. "Hey there, buddy. What's your name?" "Tommy. Nice to meet you, Tommy." He offered a fist bump, and the boy's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Can I get a picture? Please?" "Of course. You can." Tommy's mom rushed over apologizing, but Keanu just smiled and posed for the photo. The boy's joy was contagious. Other passengers smiled, some clapped, but Rebecca's face turned red with fury. "Enough. This is a boarding gate, not a photo. Op security, do your job." Keanu stood up slowly, looked at Rebecca one last time and said quietly, "I hope one day you realize kindness doesn't cost anything." Then he turned and walked toward the exit. What do you think he should have done? Revealed who he was right there or stayed silent and walked away? Drop reveal or silent in the comments. The plane took off on time. Rebecca stood in the first-class galley pouring champagne, adjusting pillows, wearing her perfect smile like a mask. She moved through the cabin with practiced grace, greeting the right kind of passengers. The ones in tailored suits, designer watches, expensive shoes. "More champagne, sir?" "Can I get you a warm towel, ma'am?" Her crew followed her lead, whispering and giggling when they thought no one was listening. Did you see that guy's face when she ripped up his pass? He actually thought he could sit up here. Rebecca doesn't play. That's why she's been here 12 years. Rebecca smiled to herself, satisfied. Another day, another faker put in his place. She had no idea that 30 minutes earlier, 3 urgent emails had been sent. One to the captain, one to the head of operations, and one directly to the CEO, all of them with the same subject line. Code Red, gate incident involving owner. At 35,000 feet, the cabin was calm. Passengers reclined in their seats. Soft music played. The lights were dimmed for the red-eye flight. Rebecca was in the galley, scrolling through her phone, checking her reflection in the mirror. Then the cockpit door opened. Captain Miles Harrison stepped out, a tall man in his 50s with graying temples and a serious expression. He wasn't smiling. Behind him walked a woman in a sharp charcoal business suit, carrying a tablet, her face pale and tense. Linda Cross, Chief Operations Officer of Apex Airlines, and behind her, still in his jeans and worn leather jacket, hands in his pockets, calm as ever, Keanu Reeves. The first-class cabin fell silent. Passengers looked up from their tablets and magazines. Heads turned. Whispers started immediately. "Wait, is that... Oh my God, that's him. What's he doing up here?" Rebecca was refilling a water glass and didn't notice at first, but her junior attendant Emily saw them and froze, her face going white. "Rebecca," she whispered urgently. "What?" Rebecca didn't look up. "Rebecca, turn around. I'm busy, Emily." "Rebecca. Now!" Something in Emily's voice made her stop. She turned, and her entire world tilted. The water glass slipped from her hand, hit the counter, shattered. Captain Harrison stepped forward, his voice firm and clear enough for the entire cabin to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. We have an urgent matter that needs to be addressed. Please remain seated." Linda Cross moved to the center of the aisle, her heels clicking against the floor. She looked directly at Rebecca, whose face had drained of all color. "Good evening, passengers. My name is Linda Cross, Chief Operations Officer of Apex Airlines." The cabin was so quiet you could hear people breathing. 30 minutes ago at Gate 17 in Los Angeles, One of our senior flight attendants publicly humiliated a passenger. She mocked his appearance, questioned his integrity, destroyed his boarding pass, and called security to have him removed. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Phones came out. Recording lights blinked on again. Linda continued, her voice steady but sharp. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known because he never said a word, is that the man she humiliated, she gestured toward Keanu, is Mr. Keanu Reeves. And 3 weeks ago, he became the majority stakeholder and new owner of Apex Airlines. The cabin exploded. No way. Are you serious? Oh my God, she didn't. Rebecca's knees buckled. She grabbed the galley counter to keep from falling. Her hands shook violently. Her perfectly styled hair suddenly felt ridiculous. Her designer uniform felt like a costume. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Keanu stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Not angry. Not smug. Just tired. He looked around at the passengers, many of whom were now standing, phones raised, capturing every second. Then he looked at Rebecca, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried through. The entire cabin like thunder. I didn't buy this airline to make money. I bought it because I wanted to see how we treat people when we think no one important is watching. He paused. And tonight, I got my answer. Keanu walked slowly down the aisle, his boots making soft sounds against the carpet. Every eye in first class was locked on him. Rebecca stood frozen by the galley, trembling, her perfect composure shattered into a million pieces. He stopped a few feet away from her, hands still in his pockets, his voice calm, but firm. Rebecca Sterling. 12 years. With Apex Airlines. Excellent performance reviews. Multiple Employee of the Month awards. She nodded weakly, unable to speak. You've served thousands of passengers, handled emergencies, trained new crew members. A flicker of hope crossed her face. But tonight, Keanu continued, his tone shifting. You showed me something those reviews never could. You showed me who you really are when you think no one's watching. He pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. On the screen was a video, shaky, filmed, from someone's phone at the gate, showing her ripping his boarding pass, laughing, calling security. 15 passengers recorded this. It's already online. 40,000 views in the last 30 minutes. Rebecca's face crumbled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her makeup. Mr. Reeves, please. I didn't know. That's exactly the problem. His voice cut through her words like a knife. You didn't know who I was, so you felt free to humiliate me. He looked around at the other passengers. But here's what really bothers me. If I'd walked up in a $1,000 suit with bodyguards and cameras, how would you have treated me? Rebecca sobbed, unable to answer. You would have smiled, offered me champagne, probably upgraded me for free. He paused. Am I right? She nodded, ashamed. So the only difference between respect and humiliation was how I looked. The cabin was silent, except for Rebecca's quiet crying. Keanu turned to Linda Cross. How many complaints has this crew received in the past year? Linda checked her tablet, her face grim. 47 formal complaints. Most involved discrimination based on appearance, age, or perceived economic status. Gasps filled the cabin. 47, Keanu repeated. And nothing was done? Standard protocol was followed, warnings were issued, mandatory training was completed. But behavior didn't change. No, sir, it didn't. Keanu turned back to Rebecca, and for a moment his expression softened. You have a family, she nodded through her tears. 2 kids, a mortgage. I need this job. I'm sure you do. And I'm sure those 47 other people needed to be treated with dignity too. He looked at the other crew members standing nervously in the galley. 3 younger attendants, all avoiding eye contact. Did any of you speak up? When you saw passengers being mistreated, did any of you say something? Silence. Then Emily, the youngest one, her voice barely a whisper. No, sir. We were afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of her. She controls our schedules, our shifts, our evaluations. If we disagreed with her, you'd suffer for it. Keanu finished. Emily nodded. Keanu sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. Then he looked at Rebecca one final time. You're not a bad person, Rebecca, but you let power turn into cruelty. And in my airline, there's no place for that. Her eyes widened in horror. Please, Mr. Reeves, I'll change. I swear You're terminated. Effective immediately. The ring. Words landed like a bomb. Rebecca's legs gave out. She collapsed into a seat, sobbing into her hands. You'll receive full severance, benefits, and a positive reference for your 12 years of service. But you're done here. Linda stepped forward with a tablet. We're making an unscheduled stop in Denver. She'll be escorted off there, passengers whispered. Some looked sympathetic, others nodded in approval. But Keanu wasn't finished. He turned to Emily and the other, junior attendants. The three of you have a choice. You can keep working the way you were taught, judging people by their wallets. Or you can help me build something better. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of fear. What do you want us to do? Keanu smiled for the first time since boarding. Lead with kindness. The plane made its unscheduled stop in Denver at 11:47 p.m. The cabin was still silent, the weight of what had happened hanging in the air like fog. Rebecca gathered her things, her designer purse, her phone, her crew badge that she'd worn with such pride for 12 years. Her hands shook as she removed it, staring at it one last time before placing it on the galley counter. She walked down the aisle toward the exit. Head down, mascara streaked across her face. Some passengers looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared, some with sympathy, others with satisfaction. As she reached the door, she stopped and turned back toward Keanu, who was standing near the cockpit, with Linda. Mr. Reeves. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, I truly am. Keanu met her eyes, his expression neither cold nor warm. Just honest. I believe you. But sorry doesn't undo what you did. It just means you finally understand. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and stepped off the plane. The door closed behind her. For a moment, no one moved. Then Keanu turned to Emily and the two other junior attendants who stood nervously by the galley. Emily, right? Yes, sir. How long have you been flying? 2 years. This was my first senior crew assignment. And you've seen this kind of behavior before? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Not just from Rebecca, from a lot of senior staff. It's like, once you get promoted, you forget what it was like to be new, to feel small. Keanu nodded slowly. That ends today. He turned to address the entire first-class cabin, his voice steady and clear. I didn't buy this airline for profit. I bought it because I believe flying should bring people together, not divide them by how much money they have or what they're wearing. Passengers leaned forward, listening intently. Starting next week, every single Apex Airlines employee will go through new training. Not about safety procedures, not about customer service scripts, about empathy, about seeing people, really seeing them. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and handed it to Emily. These are the new policies. First class will no longer be just about who can afford it. We're adding kindness upgrades. Passengers who show exceptional compassion, who help others, who make someone's day better, they get moved up. Emily's eyes widened as she read. This is incredible. And Emily, Keanu continued, effective immediately, you're the new senior flight attendant for this route. Her mouth fell open. Me? But I've only been here 2 years. Exactly. You haven't had time to forget what kindness looks like? The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers stood clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. The businessman who had spoken up at the gate raised his glass. To actual leadership, others joined in. Hear, hear. Emily's hands shook as she held the paper, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll treat every passenger like they matter. Because they do. I promise, Mr. Reeves. I swear. Keanu smiled gently, then turned to Captain Harrison. Captain, let's get these people to New York. Yes, sir. As the plane took off again, something shifted in the cabin. The atmosphere felt lighter, warmer. Keanu didn't return to his seat immediately. Instead, he walked back toward economy, smiling at passengers, stopping to chat. An elderly woman told him about her grandson's wedding. A college student showed him her film school project. A tired nurse thanked him for making her smile after a brutal shift, and Keanu listened. Really listened. Not because he had to, not because cameras were watching, but because that's who he was. When he finally returned to seat 2A, Emily approached with a glass of water and a warm smile. Mr. Reeves, is there anything I can get you? He looked up at her, that same calm, kind expression on his face. Just keep being you, Emily. That's more than enough. She blinked back tears and nodded, and for the first time in 2 years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The plane touched down at JFK Airport at 6:23 a.m. The New York skyline glowed in the early morning light, the city waking up to a new day. But for everyone on Flight 447, something had already changed. As passengers gathered their belongings and prepared to disembark, there was a different energy in the cabin. People smiled at each other. Strangers helped with overhead bags. A businessman held the aisle clear for an elderly couple, small acts of kindness inspired by what they'd witnessed. Keanu stood near the exit, thanking people as they left. Have a great day. Safe travels. Take care. The businessman in the three-piece suit stopped and shook his hand firmly. Mr. Reeves, I've flown first class for 15 years with a dozen different airlines. Tonight was the first time I actually felt like I was part of something that mattered. Thank you. Keanu smiled humbly. Thank you for speaking up when it mattered. Young mother with 2 kids stopped next, her son tugging at her hand. Mr. Reeves, my son wanted to say something. The boy, maybe 9 years old, looked up with wide eyes. You're my hero, not because you're John Wick, but because you were nice to that mean lady, even when she was mean to you. Keanu knelt down, eye level with the boy. You know what real strength is, buddy? It's being kind when someone's unkind to you. Remember that, okay? The boy nodded seriously. I will. As they walked away, Emily approached, still wearing her new senior attendant badge, her eyes red but her smile genuine. Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to say, you changed my life tonight. No, Emily, you're going to change lives. I just reminded you that you could. She wiped her eyes. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Linda Cross was waiting near the gate with a tablet, her expression serious but respectful. Sir, we've already received over 300 messages about tonight. The video from the gate has 2 million views. People are calling it the most humble billionaire moment ever. Keanu frowned slightly. I didn't do this for attention. I know, that's exactly why it matters. She showed him the tablet. Comments flooded the screen. This is what real leadership looks like. I'm booking my next flight with Apex just because of this. Finally, an airline that cares about people, not just profit. Keanu scrolled through a few, then handed it back. Make sure all the feedback gets shared with our teams, the good and the bad. We learn from both. Already on it, sir, and Mr. Reeves, thank you for showing us what we should have been all along. He nodded, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and walked into the terminal. Just another guy in worn jeans and a leather jacket. No different than when he'd arrived. But everything around him had changed. Respect isn't something you save for the rich. It's not something you give only to people who can do something for you. Respect is something you offer to everyone, and especially when you think no one important is watching. Because the truth is, everyone is important. The person you ignore today might be the one who changes your life tomorrow. The passenger in worn clothes might have more wisdom than the one in designer shoes, and the man you underestimate might just own the entire plane. Rebecca, Sterling learned that lesson at 35,000 feet, the hard way, but Emily learned it the right way, and so did every passenger on that flight. Keanu Reeves didn't fire that flight attendant to be cruel. He did it to send a message that echoed far beyond. That cabin, in his airline, in his world, Kindness comes first. And if you can't see the value in every human being, then you have no business leading others. True power isn't loud. It doesn't need gold watches, designer uniforms, or fancy titles. True power is quiet, humble, and kind. It's knowing you could destroy someone with a single word, but choosing to lift others up instead. It's treating the janitor with the same respect you'd show a CEO. It's remembering that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, and it's understanding that how you treat people when they can't do anything for you, that's who you really are. From that day forward, Apex Airlines became known not for luxury but for humanity. Not for exclusivity, but for inclusion. Because one man decided that character matters more than appearance, and kindness is never ever wasted. Type respect in the comments if you believe humility is true strength. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to thank every single